79% of Latinos have the US citizenship. So they really feel continentally at home. They go back and forth. They have a close contact to their countries of origin, sending back remittances to their families. It's a big amount, about 33 billion were sent only to Mexico in 2018. So due to immigration in the US, and also, for instance, high birth rates, they're growing fast and steadily. And together with the demographic growth, their self-confidence is growing too. They feel that the label works, the US Latino label works. So if we take popular culture, for instance, sports, music, dance, and above all food, you can tell it immediately. And but also art and literature. We have these young shooting stars like Valeria Luiselli or Junot Diaz, the Pulitzer, or Julia Alvarez. And in art, even the University of St. Gallen has 2 pieces of art of US Latinos, Mexican Americans. One is Happiness is Expensive at the main building, and the second one is in our building. This is this one. Betsabe Romero, she has always worked on the border with metaphors of mobility because of migration, like a caravan of cars.
People integrate very well into American society. Younger generations are completely bilingual. We are not seeing any monolingual pockets where English is basically a foreign language. So we see a culturally and politically more flexible, more fluid community that can, as you said in the beginning, move a lot more confidently between the borders and integrate in both worlds.
Exactly. Huntington stated this Spanish retention, which was totally wrong, because you can tell with the generational cohorts that already the 3rd generation is more proficient in English and the 4th hardly speaks Spanish anymore. So that was really a wrong statement by Huntington.
There's an interesting contrast between the omnipresence of Latinos early on in popular culture, with people like Jennifer Lopez or Sofia Vergara becoming household names, whereas it took a bit longer to see their influence translated politically. One problem is that of these 60 million Latinos, still only 29 million are eligible to vote. And many have not registered as quickly to vote as they should have. So it took some time to see their actual cultural power translate into political power. And thankfully in 2018, we've seen record numbers of Latinos actually go and vote, and also record numbers of Latinos being voted into office. So now we're counting 46 representatives in the House of Representatives of Latino origin, and we have even 5 senators now who identify as Latinos, which is a nice increase.
And it will grow, it will steadily grow. I mean, the demographics, we talked about it already before. While in 1980, let's put 40 years ago, it was around 14 million. Now it's 60, plus the undocumented Latinos, which could be another 11 million. It will grow, like there are these demographic prospects for 250 always, and they talk about 120, 130 million. That's roughly 1/3 of the population. So, I mean, I always take the example of the enclave of Miami, not the Southwest, Miami, and there the Latinos have already the political, the financial, the legal power, built on the substrate of Cuban immigration after the revolution, but now it has totally diversified. I mean, every Latin American country is represented in Miami, and there I think even politically it might be different.
Well, what we've seen is that both political parties are very strongly courting Latinos, and it's interesting. Miami is an interesting case for Democrats hoping that demography is destiny, as they say, and Miami being one of those cases where this doesn't really translate well, with many prominent Republican Latino politicians actually hailing from there. If we look at Marco Rubio, who was a presidential hopeful in 2016, or the Venezuelan community that is more leaning towards the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. So Miami is also an interesting test case for those who hope that the demographic trend is speaking in favor of the Democratic Party. Miami shows that this is not necessarily.
It's this so-called safe third country agreement from July 2019. I mean, we have similar complex problems with the refugee crisis in Europe. So that solution by Trump had the intention to prevent migrants from reaching the US, migrants above all from Honduras and El Salvador. And the third country, the safe third country, supposedly had to be Guatemala, because all the Hondurans and the Salvadorians had to pass through Guatemala. So they are obliged since July to ask for asylum in Guatemala. And now the big paradox of this all is that the humanitarian crisis in these Central American countries is even bigger, because Guatemala is not a safe country at all. I mean, it's violent, there's a lot of corruption, and there's nothing about safety in this country. Funnily enough, Venezuela is not so much part of this massive immigration. I expected that it would be much more massive to the US, but there's only about 300,000 Venezuelans now in the US, compared to the 2 million who have gone to Colombia. It's not really that substantial.
Well, currently the situation at the US border isn't really inviting. If we look at Donald Trump's zero tolerance policy, which is basically a continuation and let's say radicalization of Operation Streamline that had been initiated by the Bush presidency in 2005, that basically meant that immigrants who were illegally entering the country were prosecuted criminally. Generally, entering the United States illegally is a federal misdemeanor, but oftentimes the government only went after criminals. For instance, Barack Obama has been coined to have been the chief deporter by Donald Trump, but in his case, he focused deportations on immigrants who had been criminally active in the United States. And what we are now seeing is that the Trump administration has been going after parents accompanied by minors, and this has led to this atrocious situation of separating children from their families and holding them in detention centers that are substandard, to say the least. What is most worrisome about that situation is that the United States seems to have not been really equipped with dealing with these family separations. We have neither reliable numbers regarding the children that have been separated, nor with regards to who has been reunited with their families. And they have been ill-equipped with really handling the situation by any means. They have not had the right facilities to keep children in a safe and healthy environment. and not really kept track of where their parents would be held, etc.
Chaos.
It's chaotic and it's unworthy of a country like the United States. The idea of a wall is as old as the country is.
Yeah.
John Jay, who was the first Supreme Court justice, he wanted to have a wall of brass to keep all these fertile Irish Catholic immigrants out of the country. And later they were dreaming of a wall against Chinese migrants. And then they pulled up a literacy test wall in 1917 to keep out illiterate poor immigrants. So the idea of having a wall to keep immigrants out of the country, or the undesired immigrants out of the country, is really as old as the US is a republic. The question really is, what is the solution? Because one thing is clear, that they will have to find a bipartisan compromise on this issue. 75% of Americans deem the immigration situation an important issue, and an equally high number favor more border security. So where do you go from there?
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So we have this Latin Americanization. I mean, it really started in 2004, as I said before, with the first time that demographic reached, the Latinos reached the point of the major or the biggest minority in the US, and now it's growing, it's steadily growing, the Latin Americanization. So how can we get the empowerment for the US Latinos? With what solutions? One could be, yes?
Empowerment without creating fear.
Yeah.
Because that is the problem.
That's
right
the
now.
counterpart, yeah.
Yes, because there is huge discussion as to what do you do with the 11 million illegal
Illegals.
immigrants.
Yeah.
Do you offer them a path to citizenship? But how do you offer that without talking about an amnesty, and thereby basically confirming the fears of Trump voters who say you should not receive an award for having broken the law?
So we could take the economic side, like the entrepreneurial spirit of the young workforce of Latinos, because they're much younger demographically, so the young workforce and the entrepreneurial spirit of US Latinos, but how to manage the credits they need, for instance. And I think fintech might be a solution to that it's easier to manage the credits. Miami is always my hope, a little bit. I mean, if I go to Miami, I only speak Spanish. This is really amazing. I mean, I'm always on US territory. I don't speak English there.
This would be Huntington's nightmare. And this is the nightmare of many Trump voters who live maybe in Ohio and have been laid off, or in West Virginia and are afraid of being laid off, or who have their family on God knows what drugs, and who are sick of hearing people talk about white privilege when they see that they're not privileged at all.
Totally agree, because there was an exodus in Miami of WASPs at that time, and but I mean, still, it's one example of a kicking city which is working on the basis of the Latino economy.
The question is, how can you make Miami a dream scenario for others and not a nightmare?